The shocking murder of John Lennon in 1980 cast an immense shadow, leaving his two young sons to navigate a childhood defined by both profound tragedy and unparalleled greatness. Now in the year 2026, both Julian and Sean Lennon have successfully forged their own paths, creating lives that manage to both pay homage to and break free from the colossal weight of their father's Beatles legacy. From distinct musical careers to highly personal creative ventures, each brother has walked a unique road, all while carrying the undeniable echoes of their father's immense influence. But the fundamental question has always been, how do they possibly balance their individual identities while being perpetually bound to one of the most iconic and scrutinized names in the history of music? From his first day, Julian Lennon was given the name John Charles Julian Lennon. It was a name that immediately and irrevocably linked him to one of the planet's most celebrated musicians. For many decades, Julian bore the heavy burden that came with that famous identity. He was adored by legions of fans, relentlessly examined by critics, and forever compared to the legendary father he lost at such a tender and impressionable age. And yet, in 2020, nearly 60 years into his life and established career, he made a quiet alteration that held deep personal significance. He officially and legally rearranged his name, becoming Julian Charles John Lennon. The reasons behind this deeply personal move were shared by Julian during a candid appearance on the Word in Your Ear podcast. He emphasized that the change was not a rejection of his family or heritage, but rather a crucial and practical measure to reclaim a measure of personal autonomy. He explained, "It was in 2020, just before the world went into lockdown, that I finally decided to legally change my name by default. Because originally my name was John Charles Julian Lennon, and the absolute nightmare I had to deal with when traveling, with security companies, and all the rest of it was just endless. The core of the problem was a simple bureaucratic snag related to how official documents and digital systems prioritize a person's first name. For Julian, this meant that in a multitude of official settings, such as when dealing with airline boarding passes or checking into hotels, he was constantly being introduced as John Lennon. Whenever you had to present yourself, particularly on things like boarding passes, just as one example, he detailed, they only ever use your first name. And because of that, it would invariably come up as John Lennon. John Lennon, he repeated, the weariness of the experience evident in his voice. This recurring situation was far more than a mere inconvenience. It became an emotionally taxing burden he had to carry. Being identified publicly as John Lennon frequently led to a barrage of unwanted attention, stale jokes, or awkward comments from strangers who simply could not resist making a reference to the iconic Beatle. Over many years, these repeated encounters cultivated a persistent, low-level anxiety that Julian felt whenever he was in public. I became quite fearful and anxious about those scenarios, he openly admitted, because there would always be some wisecrack or some joke. For a man who had diligently constructed his own career and artistic identity, it was endlessly frustrating to be constantly boiled down to a famous name he had inherited, not one he had ever chosen for himself. By simply transposing his first two names, Julian ensured his preferred name was positioned at the forefront. This small but powerful change allowed him to move through the world on his own terms, all while continuing to respectfully honor the enduring legacy of his father. Beyond the bureaucratic hassles of his identity, Julian has spent his life navigating the shadow of an incredibly complicated family history. As a young boy, he was famously the inspiration behind Paul McCartney's legendary song, Hey Jude, which was originally composed as Hey Jules, to provide him comfort during his parents' tumultuous divorce. The family upheaval began when John Lennon left Julian's mother, Cynthia, for Yoko Ono, a painful separation that left deep and lasting scars on the young boy. The song itself transformed into one of the Beatles' most cherished and enduring anthems for millions around the globe. But for Julian, it has always carried a much more intimate meaning, serving as a permanent reminder of the very real struggles he confronted throughout his childhood. Decades down the line, Julian directly confronted that theme of resilience and personal reflection with his 2022 album, which he titled Jude. The name was a deliberate and powerful choice, aimed at reconnecting with his own past and reinterpreting its narrative through his own lens. In a conversation with People magazine, he clarified that the record was much more than a collection of songs. It was a mirror reflecting his personal journey towards self-acceptance. It was very much reflective, looking in the mirror deeply and trying to find that place of peace, he stated. I found it one or two times before, but it got lost in the muddle of life. Working on the album was about getting in touch with myself and who I am. For Julian Lennon, the son of the world-famous John Lennon and his first wife, Cynthia Lennon, his recollections of his father are a complex and bittersweet tapestry. Even though John was often an absent figure during Julian's early years, deeply immersed in his music, fame, and his new life with Yoko Ono, the father and son eventually began to mend their relationship. As Julian progressed into his teenage years, by the mid-1970s, the first hopeful signs of a genuine reconciliation began to appear. The two started speaking much more consistently over the phone, bonding over music and sharing small moments that meant the entire world to Julian. In a strikingly candid interview with his younger half-brother, Sean, on BBC Radio in 2020, Julian opened up about this important time. Julian fondly recalled one of their last significant conversations before John's tragic and untimely death in December of 1980. Dad and I had been getting on and speaking a lot more on the phone, when I was sort of 15, 16, and 17, he reminisced. At that specific point in his life, Julian was living in North Wales, having recently finished a period of his life away at boarding school. This particular chapter in North Wales, following his time in boarding school, fortuitously coincided with the hopeful rebuilding of his connection with his father. He recalled that specific period, explaining, I remember I was staying at my mother's place, just getting ready to wrap up my schooling. It was within this exact time frame that John reached out to Julian to share a piece of music that would later acquire a deeply haunting significance. Through a phone call, he presented him with a recently mixed version of Just Like Starting Over, one of the most prominent tracks from his last album, Double Fantasy. Julian reminisced, saying, I vividly remember him playing Starting Over for me over the phone. He had just completed the mix. My most vivid memory of our final moments together is listening to him sound so incredibly happy, truly in a wonderful place, and immersed in what he loved most. For Julian, these long-distance telephone calls represented something far more profound than simple, casual conversations. They offered him precious glimpses into the world of a father who was, at long last, discovering a sense of tranquility in both his personal life and his musical pursuits. His recollections weren't limited to Starting Over. He also remembered some of the other compelling songs John was developing at the time. The collection of music he shared with me at that point, including Starting Over and several other album tracks, made me genuinely thrilled for him. I was so excited about the prospect of seeing him again. Well, maybe in another dimension. Julian's voice trailed off, a somber acknowledgement of the cruel turn of fate that would prevent their reunion from ever happening. The intense poignancy of that specific memory has remained with Julian, profoundly shaping both his general outlook on life and the path of his creative journey. Following in his father's footsteps, Julian also pursued a professional career in music, releasing a string of albums that began with his celebrated debut in 1984. But in a departure from John's focus, Julian's creative interests have consistently stretched well beyond the confines of a recording studio, branching out to encompass filmmaking, professional photography, and the world of literature. His varied projects highlight not only his immense passion for creative expression, but also his strong desire to utilize his public platform for a positive global impact. In the year 2017, Julian introduced a new facet to his legacy with the release of Touch the Earth, the first installment in a trilogy of children's books crafted to promote ecological awareness and inspire the next generation to cherish our planet. The narrative takes children on a wondrous adventure across the globe, while aboard a fantastical vehicle called the White Feather Flyer, a creation that serves as a deeply symbolic nod to Julian's powerful connection with his father. John had once promised him that if he were ever to pass on, he would communicate with Julian from the other side, sending a white feather as a sign that he was still present. That very sign eventually materialized in Julian's life, serving as the inspiration not only for his extensive charitable work with the White Feather Foundation, but also for the whimsical, imaginative vessel that is central to his children's book series. While speaking to audiences about the book's underlying purpose, Julian clarified, "My greatest hope is that these books will serve as a gentle but firm reminder of just how magnificent the world we inhabit truly is, while also acknowledging the serious problems we collectively confront on a daily basis. Furthermore, I hope it will help cultivate the unique relationship between a parent and their child, and ideally spark meaningful discussions about the complexities of life and love too. To him, Touch the Earth and its follow-up books are not merely educational resources, but are also intended to be emotional bridges, creating valuable opportunities for parents and their children to share profound conversations, much like the ones he treasured during those fleeting final calls with his own beloved father. Julian's unwavering dedication to environmental causes and various humanitarian efforts extends much further than the written page. Through the work of the White Feather Foundation, he has lent his support to numerous projects concentrating on clean water initiatives, global health, education, and the crucial preservation of indigenous cultures. His compelling photography has been showcased in exhibitions all around the world, frequently centering on important environmental themes, while his documentary films and other cinematic projects work to amplify global narratives of remarkable resilience and transformative change. And yet, despite this extensive list of impressive accomplishments, the enormous shadow cast by John Lennon inevitably continues to loom large. Julian has never once shied away from openly acknowledging the immense challenges of growing up as the firstborn son of a worldwide cultural icon, nor has he hidden the deep pain of losing him before their complicated relationship could be fully mended and healed. But by channeling his energy into his art, his activism, and his storytelling, Julian has discovered powerful ways to alchemize that profound pain into something truly meaningful. The memory of hearing Starting Over through a telephone receiver, a singular moment that was overflowing with happiness, incredible promise, and hopeful anticipation, remains an absolutely defining chapter in Julian's life story. It was the unmistakable sound of a father and son finally rediscovering their connection, a bond that was brutally cut short by tragedy, but one that has never been forgotten. Through his powerful music, his insightful writing, and his impactful foundation, Julian has successfully carried that spirit of hope and connection forward, thereby ensuring that his own legacy is not just inextricably linked to his father's, but is also powerfully and distinctly his own creation. Now, turning to Sean Taro Ono Lennon. For John and Yoko Ono, Sean's arrival was far more than simply a cherished personal milestone. It heralded an entirely new and transformative chapter in John's life. After Sean was born, John famously withdrew from the public eye for 5 full years, making a conscious choice to devote himself entirely to fatherhood and domesticity before his celebrated return to music with Double Fantasy in 1980. That protected period afforded Sean a childhood that was grounded not just in the realities of fame, but more importantly, in the profound love of parents who were determined to shelter and nurture him. Sean's earliest years unfolded within the artistic epicenter of New York, where he was raised in an environment saturated with creativity and rich culture. One of the most instrumental aspects of his unique upbringing was the close and caring relationship he formed with his neighbor, the absolutely legendary singer Roberta Flack, who happened to live right next door. What began as a simple neighborly connection quickly blossomed into a profound, lifelong friendship, a cherished bond that Sean later immortalized in Roberta, a heartfelt documentary celebrating her remarkable life. Reflecting on his formative years with obvious fondness, Sean once shared, "I was incredibly blessed that I happened to grow up with what I can only describe as the coolest neighbor in the entire world." He went on to explain, "At first, I didn't even register that Roberta was this unbelievable artist and musician. To me, she was simply this genuinely amazing person who lived next door. We all affectionately called her Aunt Roberta, and our families were exceptionally close. That intimate connection perfectly captures the unusual yet utterly charmed environment Sean was immersed in as a child. He was a young boy surrounded by musical giants, yet he had the rare privilege of seeing them simply as ordinary, caring people within his personal circle. This uniquely grounding experience became a cornerstone of his character, profoundly shaping how he would later navigate the complexities of fame and creativity, always striving for authenticity in his relationships and his art. In a path that echoed his legendary father's and his older half-brother Julian's, Sean naturally evolved into a gifted and remarkably multifaceted musician in his own right. Over the course of his impressive career, he has delivered 4 distinct solo albums and embarked on 5 different collaborative projects with his mother, Yoko Ono. He also famously co-founded the boundary-pushing psychedelic rock group, the Claypool-Lennon Delirium, alongside the iconic Primus bassist, Les Claypool. With this band, Sean fully delved into experimental and surreal soundscapes, a creative direction that enabled him to carve out a unique artistic niche far removed from the colossal expectations attached to his family name. His expansive creativity also found an outlet in the role of a producer, most notably when he lent his considerable talents to Lana Del Rey's 2017 album, Lust for Life. This collaboration was met with widespread critical acclaim, further solidifying his reputation as a versatile and respected artist. Despite achieving significant success on his own terms, Sean has consistently admitted that his core motivation for pursuing a life in music has always been deeply personal. His entire musical journey is fundamentally rooted in the profound grief and a persistent longing for the father he tragically lost when he was only 5 years old. In a strikingly candid interview with People magazine in November of 2024, he clarified this, stating, "I never started playing music just because I happened to be good at it." He continued, "I had lost my father, and I had no idea how to begin to fill that immense void. Learning to play his songs on the guitar was my way of processing the loss through an activity that made me feel powerfully connected to him." For Sean, music transformed into something far greater than a profession. It became a form of therapy, a spiritual bridge to the man whose sudden absence had defined so much of his existence. "When you've lost a parent," he explained, "things like that become your driving force because, in a way, you're always trying to find them again. Making music has always made me feel like I was getting to know him better, understanding him more deeply," he reflected. Through his artistry, Sean is doing more than just carrying on the Lennon legacy. He is engaged in a continuous, heartfelt search for a connection to the father who departed all too soon. A central and stabilizing pillar in Sean's life has been his relationship with his half-brother, Julian Lennon, who is 12 years his senior. In spite of the considerable age gap and a complicated family dynamic that could have easily created a rift, the two brothers share a remarkably close and supportive bond. In fact, Julian has frequently and warmly referred to Sean as his absolute best mate. Their undeniable closeness was showcased for the world to see in 2021 when they made a point of attending a screening of the Beatles' Get Back Together. Julian confessed that he was initially very hesitant to revisit that chapter of his family's history. "I was like, I really don't need to do that," he recalled thinking. But Sean was very adamant and felt a strong commitment to going, and as it happened, we were both in LA. So I said, "Listen, I'll go with you." I told him, "Let's go together. Let's tackle this as a team." And in the end, it was a truly great thing to do. These kinds of moments powerfully underscore the resilient strength of their relationship, which has clearly become a vital source of stability for both men as they navigate the extraordinarily complex legacy of being John Lennon's sons. Speaking with genuine affection for Sean, Julian once said, "We're brothers, and we love each other deeply on that fundamental level. It's as simple as that. We just have conversations daily, the same as any other siblings would," he added, emphasizing the normality of their connection. In a celebrity world often defined by bitter rivalries and fractured family relationships, their steadfast bond is both exceptionally rare and deeply heartening. In 2020, Sean Lennon stepped into a deeply personal role that few could ever hope to carry with such profound grace and sensitivity, hosting a special BBC radio broadcast to commemorate what would have been his father John Lennon's 80th birthday. The program was conceived as more than just a celebration of John's incredible life and timeless music. It was also designed to be an intimate, personal reflection on the powerful legacy he left behind, particularly for his youngest son. This special event gathered an incredible collection of voices from across the spectrum of John's world, including family, famous collaborators, and his dearest lifelong friends. The legendary Paul McCartney joined the broadcast, fondly reminiscing about the early, electrifying days of the Beatles and reflecting on the enduring, world-changing impact of his songwriting partner. Elton John, another of John's very close companions, also participated enthusiastically, sharing personal stories filled with laughter, explosive creativity, and the unique bond they forged both on and off the stage. For listeners around the globe, the show became a deeply moving intersection where public history met private, poignant emotion. It expertly bridged the gap between the monumental figure of John Lennon, the icon, and the tender, private memories held by those who knew him best as a person. For Sean, the experience was both a tremendous honor and a significant emotional undertaking. He admitted quite openly that revisiting his father's catalog, especially certain tracks, still carried an immense emotional weight. "I honestly do worry about crying," he confessed with raw vulnerability. Because sometimes I think, when I talk about certain songs that Dad wrote, they are just so intensely emotional, he revealed to the audience during the broadcast. He then went on to explain that the songs from his father's final years, particularly those created during the double fantasy sessions, are by far the hardest for him to face. They are difficult for me to even think about, let alone bring myself to listen to some of them, especially the later stuff, just because my memories of them making double fantasy are so vivid. And some of that material just completely breaks my heart, he concluded, because it's like a time machine that instantly transports me back to that moment. Hearing it instantly transports me back to those final, haunting moments just before he was taken away. This unguarded emotional honesty confirmed what millions of admirers had long suspected. For Sean, the towering legacy of his father isn't merely a cultural phenomenon. It's an intensely private and personal inheritance. The anthems by John Lennon that resonate in stadiums and homes all over the world are, for his son, intimate fragments of a family's history. Like pages torn from a private diary, these are memories crystallized in melody, moments that Sean can still touch and feel every time he listens. Music, for him, transcends being a mere career. It is a vibrant, ongoing conversation with the father he lost too soon. It is a dialogue that has profoundly shaped his worldview and his very sense of self, echoing through the decades since John's tragic departure. Although Sean's bond with his father's incredible body of work is undeniably deep and sacred, his own artistic journey has been a whirlwind of diverse and daring exploration, proving he is no mere shadow. As an exceptionally talented multi-instrumentalist and a thoughtful songwriter, Sean has meticulously crafted a career that boldly defies the monolithic expectations that come with his famous surname. His creative path has seen him release compelling solo albums and even join forces with his mother, Yoko Ono, on boundary-pushing avant-garde musical experiments. Furthermore, he dove headfirst into the surreal world of psychedelic rock, teaming up with the legendary Les Claypool to form their mind-bending band, the Claypool-Lennon Delirium. However, amidst all this creative exploration, perhaps the most defining partnership of his entire life, both artistically and personally, has been with the multifaceted Charlotte Kemp Mule, his devoted partner in every sense of the word. The pair's paths first crossed at the iconic Coachella Music Festival back in 2005, a meeting that would alter the course of both of their lives. At that time, Kemp, who was already a highly successful model, possessed artistic ambitions that stretched far beyond the world of high fashion. Their connection was immediate and electric, a spark that ignited not just a romance, but a powerful creative fusion. They quickly discovered a mutual passion for unconventional sounds and a burning desire to forge something new together. By 2007, what started as a festival connection had blossomed into a deeply committed relationship. This personal bond soon evolved into an incredibly dynamic and innovative artistic partnership, out of which they launched their band, The Ghost of a Saber-Toothed Tiger, a name fans affectionately shortened to Ghost. This unique musical project became their creative playground, a space where they could freely blend the earthy tones of folk, the swirling colors of psychedelia, and the raw energy of indie rock, all tinged with a signature touch of playful surrealism. The result was a sound that was at once imaginatively whimsical and profoundly complex, with Sean's masterful skill across multiple instruments, providing the perfect sonic landscape for Kemp's insightful songwriting and hauntingly ethereal voice. The enigmatic duo took their unique sound on the road, embarking on extensive tours that captivated audiences. They steadily cultivated a dedicated and loyal fan base, comprised of listeners who deeply admired their bold refusal to pander to mainstream formulas, choosing instead to celebrate the pure, unbridled joy of artistic experimentation. For Sean, creating music and sharing his life with Kemp has represented something far more significant than a simple professional collaboration. This partnership has been a profoundly stabilizing anchor in his often tumultuous world, a constant source of inspiration that has fueled both his art and his personal growth. Their enduring relationship, which has now thrived for well over a decade, stands as a powerful testament to the delicate balance Sean has masterfully achieved the ability to profoundly honor his monumental past while simultaneously forging his own distinct path forward. While the world-famous Lennon name will always attract a certain level of scrutiny, the incredible body of work they have created together is irrefutable proof that Sean is not merely a custodian of a legacy. He is the architect of his own. Moreover, their solid and private partnership offers a fascinating glimpse into how Sean has successfully learned to navigate the treacherous waters of a life lived under the constant glare of the public spotlight. His early years were tragically defined by the unimaginable loss of his father and the crushing weight of global expectation. In stark contrast, his adult life has been a powerful narrative of unbridled creativity, enduring partnership, and remarkable resilience. This versatility is evident in everything he does. Whether he is behind the scenes, skillfully producing music for a diverse array of other talented artists, or diving into his own genre-defying experimental projects, or even stepping into the spotlight to host heartfelt tributes to his father, Sean transitions seamlessly between being a devoted guardian of a sacred legacy and a fearless pioneer of groundbreaking new concepts. That poignant 2020 radio program he hosted served as a perfect symbol of this unique duality he embodies. It provided a platform for Sean to gather the voices of people who were closest to his father, giving listeners an incredibly rare and intimate opportunity to hear firsthand accounts and deeply personal anecdotes. Simultaneously, the program was a showcase of Sean's own immense courage as he bravely confronted excruciatingly painful memories from his past and chose to share that vulnerability with a global audience. As he reflected on so-called time machine songs, like the tracks from Double Fantasy, audiences could hear more than just the enduring grief of a son. They could feel the immense love, deep admiration, and the unbreakable connection that music continues to offer him. Today, as a man navigating his late 40s, Sean Lennon represents a truly rare and fascinating combination of forces. He carries the undeniable weight of a legendary history on his shoulders, yet he moves with the untethered spirit of a true independent artist. He is, and always will be, a son who feels the profound void left by his father's absence, but he is also a masterful artist who has discovered how to transform that very emptiness into a powerful source of creative fuel. With his steadfast partner, Kemp Mule, by his side, Sean continues to compose music that is both deeply personal and artistically daring, guaranteeing that his own narrative is never just a footnote to his father's, but a captivating and continually evolving saga all its own. What are your thoughts on the journeys of John Lennon's two sons? We would love to hear your opinions, so please drop a comment in the section below. If you found this exploration interesting, show your support by giving it a like, sharing it, and subscribing for more. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again in our next video. Goodbye.